Hey guys, how are y'all doing out there? I'm hoping that you're having a great summer start to your summer. It is for us today, it's May the 29th, and we're rolling this on a Wednesday. We were just talking about this on my end of the world. It's a crazy time of year, but it's exciting. Some of you are going to be listening to this, and at the time you're listening, I'm going to be a married man.
Woo!
So
That's exciting. That's a
it's
big deal,
we're
man.
coming up on the heels of my wedding, and this be the man stuff is coming to a culmination
Yeah.
of all the practical things.
Yeah,
So
we're gonna see what kind of
exciting.
job you do, Eli. You've been sitting with me for a year and a few months now. We'll see what kind of job you do. You can give some real time
Practical thing.
feedback. You might come back and say, "You're nuts, man. None of that works.
You know,
None of that works."
I'm
man.
the Be the Man live experiment,
Guinea pig.
not the
Yeah, that's
experience,
Eli,
the
right?
experiment.
I like that.
Yeah.
I
So,
like that.
if
Bro.
for those of you guys out there listening, I hope you're having a great great weekend. We're coming off the heels of Memorial Day weekend, which that was just a great
Yeah,
service.
it's
Pastor.
fantastic, man. We had a good time. House was full. Had barbecue. I know we made 400 boxes, plates of barbecue, and set them out there for the congregation. Somebody told me there might have been a dozen or 15 or something like that
man.
left over.
I got
We
some
fed
of
a
them.
lot of people,
It's
man.
good.
And I would have eaten one of those extra ones if I'd have. Hey, I would have done my part. But we had a lot of people, fed a lot of people.
Yep.
And had a lot of people here in worship, and gosh, it was a great day. Eli had the banjo out, had a
Whoop,
little
whoop.
fiddle. We did a little Southern gospel. Hey, jump on the archives and find it.
Yep.
The singing preachers, Eli and I and Johnny, did a little trio. It's still the cross. What a message! What
Amen.
a word, man. So yeah, jump on there and find that, guys. Thank you for always being supportive of what we do, and certainly we trust that this is a blessing to you. I'm excited about your wedding, Eli. Let's talk a little bit about that, man. You broached that topic, so tell us how you and Miss Hope are doing. Are you feeling stressed? Are you relaxed? Tell me how it's rolling?
You know,
with you, brother.
it's interesting. It kind of the ranging of emotions are pretty insane at this point. You know,
Yeah.
you go from, oh my goodness, we got these last minute plans, we've got to figure this out, to then on the other end in the same conversation we could also be like, we're about to get married, and then we're
Yeah.
excited as we can be. You know,
You think I've only got 2 weeks, and
Yeah.
you think how fast?
It's like-
Why is this not happening, man? We should be there. So yeah, you're in the throes of it.
It is
brother.
an exciting time, and we are just, you know, I'm tickled to death to be where I'm at. And you know, we were actually thinking about this the other day. I was looking through my camera roll, and I was looking through some of my pictures when I was in high school, which was maybe
Yeah.
7 years
Yeah, it's
ago.
a while back for you.
And it's like that, you know, I'm like, man, if you would have told me 7-8 years ago that I would be getting married in June of 2024, I would have thought you was
Nah,
crazy. I'm like,
not
no
me.
way.
Got some stuff to do.
And
I
here we are,
guarantee.
and I'm just, I couldn't imagine being anywhere else. So it's really cool, man.
Yeah, I'm excited for you guys, and hope we love you.
Yes.
Both families. I just love you guys. I know all of you listen to us out there and support us, and my goodness, we're thankful. Love, hope, and Eli, and gosh, I know everybody listening to you, Eli, wishing you the best and praying and lifting you guys up. Talking about the fact over this year and a half that our ladies really don't need managers, and they really don't need masters. They need men in their lives, and that's our aim. Job description, I always want to take you back to that Ephesians. Love your wife, guys. Love her in the same way that Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. And that has been our premise, our note of emphasis each and every week. And we're going to keep it that way.
Yeah.
Certainly expanding, though, in a new horizon, new thoughts, and talking about men in every aspect of life. For Men podcast, you know, by a couple of guys out there, just for guys listening, just to enable you and to equip you to more fully engage in God's call as first and foremost his child,
Yep.
and secondly as a man in this world. So we're helping you some out there, guys. We do.
And I will say for this podcast and the purpose and the main idea of it, I was actually filling out a little thing just to, you know, on each of the media outlets we have, Spotify and YouTube, and one of them asked me, said, well, describe your podcast, describe what this podcast is about. And it really got me thinking, you know, well, man, this podcast covers a large spectrum of
it's
things.
wide.
But just as you were saying, you know, it's about our job description as men. So for y'all out there, I know that I'm going to be the experiment for this as well going into marriage, but really put these things into practice.
Yeah.
They are some of these tools Pastor's given me. I went back again, looking through some of the old podcasts to revamp our Spotify and YouTube. and go back maybe sometimes and look at those first 8 to 10 episodes,
Yeah,
really
that's
laying the foundation.
That's the core. That's what we build
Stuff's
all
good.
on. Yeah,
And it's practical too.
It's gold. It's really good, man. And we've been talking about just this last couple episodes about, what kind of men we want to be. A challenge to, take care of our homes, take care of ourselves. And your home can be you. If you're a single guy, then you have a home.
Right.
It's you. You're taking care of your life. You might have a bride. You might have kids. Who knows? You might have grandkids. You might have great-grandkids listening to this. I don't know. So, you're still responsible for, hey, let me live before these guys and let me equip these guys. Let me accomplish my job description. So we're talking about a couple of guys in the Old Testament, which I love, man. I love Old Testament stories. It's kind of the way that we grew up. Started talking about Noah. We've talked about him for a couple podcasts here. Being a boat builder, that describes who we should be, even in this modern day. As men, if we learn to see ourselves as boat builders, it's going to help us to more fully engage and accomplish what the Lord has set before us as men. And how unique is everyone's boat? I thought about that this week, cool. Eli. How unique that I was on a long walk by myself, and I thought, Noah built the boat that Noah was supposed to build.
Right.
And, I didn't run out my backyard and start getting the ark dimensions and say, good, I need to build one of these for my family. We're going to live in this thing, the tiny house. Maybe that's the boat house. I don't know. I didn't do that. Why? Because that's really not the boat that the Lord has instructed me to build. It's certainly a spiritual boat that we're talking about, and every one of those is different. The dimensions of yours is different than mine. The look of it's different than mine. The need, the capacity, all of it, everyone's is different, but I believe the Lord is specific if you listen to him, and there's certainly some common things that we talked about. Jump back and listen to those podcasts. I don't know that I said Moses. I gave a disclaimer that I might say Moses.
I don't think you did. I think you did a pretty good job.
I think I did okay. I don't know. But we're talking about Noah being that bold boat builder for his family. And today I want to jump into another thought, and I want to say one name and see how it lands with you, Eli. He kind of knows this is who we're talking about this week. And I don't know how many episodes this will be. We'll just see where the Lord takes us. But, one of my favorite Old Testament figures, maybe the most notorious and maybe the most famous, even to people outside the faith, would maybe know who you were talking about if you threw this name out, is David. Mm-hmm. How does that name, what do you think about when I first say David, Eli? What are some descriptions that come to your mind?
Well, one of the most distinct things I think about, and I know we're going to land on this, is in the first part of David's, I call it his ministry and his life, was the story of David and Goliath.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a
big
pretty
deal,
big one.
man.
King
That's
David.
A big
He was
deal.
a young guy, did all kinds of things, and I think about somebody who went through a lot of things as a young man. I resonate with him.
Yeah.
But I mean, he faced a lot of giants, literally and metaphorically.
Yeah.
And to see all the things he's went through and then come on the other side of it, and just his testimony for the Lord, I think we're gonna be able to get a lot of cool things out of it.
Oh, I do too. And I think of him being a man after God's own heart. Yep. That's something that always leaps to my mind when you think of David. That's what comes to your mind. And I love that. I would like to think that I could get there. It seems like a lofty goal.
Yep.
I don't know that it's said of anyone else at all in Scripture in that way, that they were a man after God's own heart. I think for us, let me encourage you guys, though, before we jump into this today, I think one of the things I love about David is the transparent way that the Scripture treats him in his failure. Amidst all these grand things that he did and the spiritual giant and the faith that he had, for sure, in the Lord, here you have this glaring failure in his life, a monumental failure in his life. And that encourages me, Eli, that the Lord, you don't have to be perfect for the Lord to use you. Mm-mm. You really don't. And I think there's sometimes in life where the enemy will say, you just disqualified yourself from anything that God's going to do in your life. Every plan he had for you, you just threw it out the window. And I think I love the story of David because it underscores this fact. And think about it, even before Christ, this is pre-Christ, right? This is pre the cross. This is pre the empty tomb. This is pre the letters of Paul. Yeah. Even then, here's the Lord telling us of his grace and his mercy that extends to us, that, you know what, it's all of us are disqualified, period. The day that we're born, we're born into sin. We know that.
Yeah.
That's who we are. It's not what we do, it's who we are. And men, we're disqualified but from any favor, from any use by God in any way, other than because of the grace and the mercy of God. And here's David saying, even if there's a monumental failure, guys, if you've blown it to the uttermost, here's David. You think, what did he do, Pastor? Maybe some of you guys don't know. Here's David committed adultery, Here's David ultimately on the heels of that perpetrating a murder to try to cover up his adultery. And here's the old prophet Nathan, emblematic of the Holy Spirit, coming and telling this little story to the king. And king gets a little mad. Tell me who that man is. This day he's going to find some justice and some judgment at my hand. And I can imagine the old prophet Nathan with that bent finger, as prophets are bent to have, It's you. It's you, king. Yeah. You're the man. And David's heart broke. And we have Psalm 51, right? It comes out of that. Lord, create in me a clean heart. Yeah. Restore an upright spirit within me. Restore the joy of my salvation to my heart and my life. So there's just a little sermonette for you, just a word of encouragement that when you listen to this, don't think, well, man, you're talking about Noah. You're talking about David. You're talking about guys that are giants. I'm never going to be there. I'm just a little fella trying to make his way through this world. But both of them, Noah, I love what Eli saw. Hey, he found favor, right? Remember, he brought that out. He found favor in the eyes of the Lord. The Lord never forgot him. Yeah. He remembered him, even though he made all the mistakes that no doubt. I mean, they weren't recorded as clearly as David's were, but no doubt Noah was a human being just like we are. So how's that land with you, Eli, this idea that David really might be the quintessential example of no matter where you've gone and no matter what you've done, there's the grace of God.
I even look back, and I wanted to say this about Noah too. I mean, whenever we were going through this about Noah's and what his great accomplishments were, whenever he got off the ark, you see the last part of Genesis there. I think a lot of times I didn't even realize this until recently. The end of that story of what happened to Noah, and he didn't do too great. He
didn't finish well.
He didn't finish well. He had some failures in the end of his life there. And even because of that, like exactly what you're saying, he was a failure just like everybody else was. They messed up.
He was a human being, man.
He was a human being.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then that goes right into David. David, he definitely had some setbacks, had some challenges in his way, but that doesn't mean that the Lord didn't use him. I mean, the Lord still was able to be ever so present in his life. And to see the ministry that Noah did despite his failures, and then to see David anointed the third king of Israel despite his failures, and then even after he was anointed king, he had failures. I mean, despite those
we
things.
even see Jesus. Who did they tie his lineage to? If you think of David's stature, he's the lineage of David, the house and the lineage of David. That was part of it, to come from King David's lineage. So, I mean, severe failure, but yet the Lord used him in such a mighty way. And guys, don't ever forget that. Maybe you're in a place that you could beat yourself to death today. Find the grace of God, find the mercy of God, because it's there. I love Hebrews. Come to the throne. Come to the throne of grace. Eli's taught through that. It's characterized as a throne of grace. You go there, you'll find help. Yep. You will. You'll find the help you need in the moment. And so I can confidently say, I don't care where you've been. I don't care what you've done. Eli was talking with my cousin at Memorial Day Cookout yesterday. He's a dynamic prison ministry, works with men who've just made mistakes and tries to help them find faith and then find their footing so that when they're out of prison, they can come back and function well as men of God in society. And, his message is, it doesn't matter where you've been. It doesn't matter what you've done. The Lord loves you, and there's a way of redemption for you. So that's my message today, maybe to these guys first and foremost, is as we delve into some of this great story, some of these great things that David did, and I'm challenging you to be giant killers in your life today. Boat builders, yes, but I think we do well if we can think about, I want to be a giant killer. That would help me engage in my purpose as a man on this planet. So we'll talk about David, certainly a king, certainly a man after God's own heart, all these things. But in 1 Samuel 17, we see him as a shepherd. That's what we see him. That's where we pick him up. He's a shepherd. He's just tending sheep. He's the youngest kid. He's the youngest boy, and a tribe of boys, obviously. He is the youngest dude. And, you wouldn't think a shepherd would make a giant killer, but that's exactly what we see. And there's some lessons in that if you'll be where you're supposed to be, doing what you're supposed to be doing, you can rest assured that the plan of God will come about in your life. You can rest assured that nobody can hide you, because even his daddy didn't really. Not David, really? No, come on now. This is a kid. He's a shepherd out in the field. You don't want David for king, not him, man. Even his own dad couldn't see him as anything but a shepherd. And Eli mentioned his age. Scholars tell us that. Yeah, some scholars speculate he was in his early teens.
Yeah.
In these moments. That's a young man, especially in Old Testament days when you're talking about people living much longer than they do now. You're talking about a very, very young man that we pick up this story of David and Goliath. Eli mentioned it right off. It's one of the most notorious movies have been made about this. So here we are. We're going to look at that in the scripture, and we're going to, it's a long story. It is. It's a brilliant story, and I challenge you, go back and read it. Go back and read it. We're not going to do that right here on the air today. We're going to pick through it a little bit, and I'm going to try to sequence it if I can. I love the language in the Bible. Talks about, here's the Philistines on one mountain. Here's the Israelite army on the other mountain. And I love the old language, brother, that they're arrayed against each other. The armies of Israel arrayed against the Philistines. That means they're spread out and ready to roll, and they think, man, we're going to have a fight right here today. This is going to be a fight, and we are ready. We're going to fight for the Lord, and we believe the Lord's going to help us win. And then all of a sudden, nothing's happening until the armies of the Philistines send out this dude. What is his name, Eli?
Goliath.
When I read his stature a little bit, I thought, that's Eli. I really did. I thought, man, I can picture Eli rolling out as the champion of the Philistine army. I really could. Eli, have you got a copy of the word? We're talking about cubits and spans, maybe in the King James and the New King James, which, by the way, I love. I have a love affair with the New King James version of the Bible. Really do love it. It's my go-to, but love them all. So if you're reading one, praise God for you out there. Just whatever you're reading, I'm happy that you're reading one. But can you translate some of his height? I think they started out with the height of this guy was 9.
Well, in the King James, in King James it was 6 cubits in a span. And then I'm pretty sure that translates to like 9 feet, a little over
9 feet, 9 inches is what it is.
Like,
that's almost 10 feet tall.
Big dude.
These 10 feet tall and bulletproof. You wonder if that didn't come from Goliath.
Because
you
really
all
the equipment he had. He had a helmet of brass. He was armed with a coat of mail. The weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of brass. I mean, he had greaves of brass on his leg.
I'm trying to. You see me fishing with my phone because I'm trying to make sure I'm not saying something incorrect. But here's what my mind tells me. So, and my mind's old, Eli, so I could be wrong. But I think that was over 100 pounds. I think that was over 100 pounds. I'm not certain for sure, but I think it was well over 100 pounds. Let's see, 125 pounds is what I'm looking at right here. Just that coat of mail, just that one thing. And it goes on to say he had what else? I mean, he had brass
on his legs there. He had
helmet
of brass.
How about his
shoulders?
Spear? Can you think of this? A spear. I love the New King James because it says it was between his shoulders.
Yep.
So I can, and you guys that are YouTube and you're watching, because I'm animated. When I preach, I'm animated. If you tied my hands, I'd be in real trouble in the pulpit. So it says, but I can almost picture it on his back. We can reach up and grab it and wham, throw that thing like a weaver's beam. Yeah. Dudes, that's big. I mean, can you think of a 4x4 post as your spear? I couldn't throw that very far.
And the spear head weighed 600 shekels of iron. So I don't know. My math's probably off, but it's 50 pounds. I mean,
15 pounds, 20 pounds.
Okay,
yeah, just the head of it.
I mean, that's just
pounds.
the head.
Yeah. So Eli works out. You throw a 20-pound medicine ball around very much. I mean,
it's tough.
Yeah, it's not easy. You do those wall shots.
One-handed as a spear.
Yeah. I mean, and hoping it goes somewhere with accuracy. So this guy was big. That's what we're saying here. I mean, let's boil it right down. This guy was big. And I wanted to start there because I did a little better at preparing today. I didn't prepare Eli, but I tried to prepare my thoughts because this is a big story. It's a long story, and I don't want to miss anything. So I kind of want to show you some things, Eli, that do not matter, okay, to a giant killer. Because the first thing when I say go be a giant killer, you think, what kind of giant are we talking about? Okay, I mean, hey, what are we talking about? So these things don't matter to a giant killer. They didn't matter to David. One of them was the magnitude of the enemy. Okay, It didn't matter how big he was. It didn't matter what he looked like. It didn't matter that he looked out there and saw this guy. Secondly, and we'll bridge on down through the story as we look at these. How about the message of your peers? Let's tarry on the magnitude. Sometimes the enemy, you know what he's going to do to you when he wants you to fold up your tents and run? He's going to put a big enemy in front of you. He's going to put a big foe. He's going to put a big roadblock in your way. When you're moving for the Lord, when you're being used of the Lord, and when you're engaging, trying to be the man, don't be surprised when the magnitude of your enemy is huge. I don't want to run from that yet, Eli, for some reason. You have any thoughts on that, just in life, practically? Maybe something you faced or something that'll encourage the guys out there?
Well, I think about, again, going back to this story a little bit, there's so many people in the Bible, and this, as a student pastor, talking to the students, there's a lot of people that can look down on you because of your age and because of, your stature, or because of you're just in high school or whatever. And you see the man of David as a giant killer and how he was just, for all intents and purposes, he was a teenager who was shepherding a flock.
Absolutely.
And the Lord used him in a mighty way. So whenever the enemy tries to get into your head and just other people outside discouraging you just because of mere facts of, well, you're too young.
That's too much for you, man.
You can't handle that.
You're not qualified
then
for that.
You recognize those are not, that's a lot from the enemy, and that the Lord, if he's equipped you for this job, he'll make it happen. You just got to trust him to do it.
Absolutely. And you think of Paul, what did he tell Timothy? Hey, I know you're young. I know you are, but don't let anybody despise you for your youth. I love serving with young people. I love serving with Eli. He's young in my eyes. He's very mature. He's like David. He is like that. He's very mature. You don't need to look down on Eli for his age. I served with a guy for 20 years here. He's been on the podcast. Adam serves with us, executive pastor, part of the team. Yep. I can remember he was 20 when I met him. He was an intern, 20 years old. And I thought I was ancient, I really did. I was about 30. I thought I was really ancient. Look at this young guy. What in the world? I look back now. I was pretty young myself, thinking I was looking at somebody else that was pretty young. Wow. But I love serving with young folks, young spirited folks. I love that. And we have been blessed at Trinity to have some very young, mature leadership here. And that's giant. It really is. So you don't let anybody. That segues from the magnitude to the message really well, because look at what these guys, David shows up. So I'm going to keep narrating here. All right. This guy does this for like 40 days. Yeah. All right. If I'm in Israel's army, I'm hoping the king's eyes don't find me, all right, to say, hey, Stace, guess what? I think the Lord's told me you need to go and fight this guy out here. I'm sure no one wanted to make eye contact with the king because, 40 days, this guy's essentially mocking the armies of Israel,
hanging out,
calling them chickens, and hey, let's fight. The armies don't have to fight. If one of you can beat me, we'll be your servants. If I beat, then you got to be our slaves. And no one's moving, man. Nobody going to go out and fight this guy. They thinking somebody got to be crazy to go out there. There's got to be another plan, another way. Yeah. And here comes David. His daddy sends him out with some bread and some cheese. I love I'm a food guy, so I looked at what he took: 10 loaves of bread, some cheese. Give that to the guy over the boys' regiment. 3 of his brothers were there, his eldest. And so Dad was sending food to the front lines, to help feed the people. Barley, bread, all these things he was sending out there. And it just so happens that when David's standing there, this cat comes out and starts mocking, the armies of Israel. David takes exception to this, and we'll look later at some of the things David says, as evidence of his trust in the Lord, and maybe evidence of things that are in the lives of a giant killer in the way of our faith. But he takes exception to this. He starts talking haughty. What in the world? Why are we standing around here?
Yeah,
letting this cat talk like that to us? No,
We gotta do
we're not
something
going to
about
do this. Who is he to speak to us like this? One of my favorite passages is, who is this? And here's what I love about the New King James and the Old King. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine? I don't think you could have said anything any worse about anybody from an Israelite than an uncircumcised Philistine. He is calling this dude out.
Yeah.
He's calling his people out. Who is this guy? He's an uncircumcised Philistine. He's going to talk this way about the armies of the living God, and we're going to stand here?
We're going to stand here and let him do it. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, his brothers didn't like that, right? What'd they say? Son, you better hush. Let me tell you who you are. Let me remind you who you are. You're a sheep herder.
Yeah. Stay in your place.
You're just a little kid sheep herder bringing food out here to us, so you hush. Well, you know what that did to David? Nothing. He started telling other people, and they started saying the same thing. So here's something else that doesn't matter, okay? One thing that doesn't matter to a giant killer is the magnitude of the enemy. It doesn't matter. If the Lord brings you, is leading you down a path, and all of a sudden here's this big enemy standing in your way. It does not matter how big it is to you if you're convinced that the Lord has led you down this road. Yeah. You can be confident that the Lord's in it and he's going to take care of it. The second thing it doesn't matter is the message of your peers, the people that are around you. And this is what Eli started talking about, especially in the context of David being so young, and you students out there, don't buy into the message of the world today in your life and the people around you that are telling you that God is not at work in your life, that you are not ready for this, that this is, hey, you don't even deserve to speak into this, much less be able to face such a giant in your life and overcome it. So Eli, again, the message of your peers around you, you get any negative language in your life at all, that's really what we're talking about, is that doesn't stop a giant killer, guys. Negative language just cannot slow us down. Eli, speak to that a little bit.
I love the again, we talk about the old King James. I love the way this renders this when all the men of Israel saw Goliath standing there, and David's, he's in the back kind of helping them, giving them the food or whatever, and they saw Goliath and they were sore afraid. It's like, I love the way that because that's also in the New Testament. They're sore afraid. I mean, them guys.
That's when the angels showed up, man, in the field of shepherds. Absolutely.
Like, I can't imagine their reaction. So, and I think about in my life of being a young man, especially endeavoring into ministry and just growing up in ministry. The tasks that I'd been given, some of the things that I was asked to do. Dad back in his first early starts to his ministry when I was a younger man, maybe 12, 13 years old, asking me to lead a choir or sing in the choir, do something like that. Not anything compared to David, but still I'm like, that's a tall order for me to do, Dad. Yeah. So then to hear the enemy in my head saying, well, you can't do that, you're too young, or you can't do that, you're unqualified. Yeah. And just in any realm, you're going to make a mess of this,
you're going to ruin this, Eli. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
to take the reaction of the Israelites and to say, well, I'm so afraid of that. I can't move. I'm sore afraid.
I'm paralyzed. We're standing here.
We just can't do anything about it. But instead, to take those and to turn them around and say, well, like David said, I'm on the team of the living God.
Wait a minute now.
I'm going to go after this and make it happen because this is the best thing I can do.
Y'all ain't going to do something, I'm going to do something.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So when everybody else around you is saying that you can't do it, or they're even sore afraid. Of what's ahead, then you got to be that leader, and that's what we need in today's day and age.
I agree.
Is leaders.
And Eli, think about this in some way. His posture exposed their posture, which is where the language comes from. So sometimes it's easier to absorb negative language when you realize that maybe what you're doing is challenging some other people's shortcomings, or maybe the Lord's been asking them to do what you're doing, and they've seen it as way too big. And then when you begin to undertake it, I've been at this a while, so I'll speak to this. I can't tell you how many times in 30 years in ministry that, the Lord has led us down a road as leadership, and the first thing that people say, oh, that ain't going to work. Or we've tried that. We've tried that before, and it didn't work. So, for you to undertake something that someone else has tried and it didn't work, on some level is exposing them. And you're not meaning to, but they take it as, well, now, wait a minute, why couldn't I get that done? And he's going to get it done. And I've been saying all these years that doesn't work. It doesn't work. No need to try it. It's not going to work. We can't build that building. We can't afford that. We can't do this. We'll never reach them. There's no need to go in that community. There's no need to do that. And people are negative sometimes because of fear, and then maybe because of their shortcomings. Maybe we didn't even try it.
Yeah.
And here's this young person or this new person ready to tackle something under the leadership of the Lord. And I think that is key. The Lord's timing was obvious in this. And he let those guys be so afraid so they wouldn't go out.
Yep.
Because he was setting the stage for something dynamic that would be monumental, not only in David's life, but in the life of the nation. So certainly we see the Lord's sovereign hand at work. I'm not discounting that. But don't let the language, the message, hey, the magnitude of your enemy, yes, don't let that stop you. It never stops a giant killer. But the second thing is, do not let the message of your peers, just because somebody else tells you, let the message of the Lord in your life override the message of the peers around you. How about marriage? Let's apply it to that. If you go back to some of those early episodes, I love this because Tammy and I can remember the message people gave us when we were embarking. When we were at Eli and Hope Bar 2 weeks out, it seemed like everybody told us the worst marriage story you could possibly ever want to hear. I know it's not going to be this way for y'all, but, here we go.
Listen.
Yeah, and you're thinking, wow, thanks for the encouragement. I really appreciate that, So they're trying to set you up to say, don't be surprised when you fail at this because you're going to. And that's what Be the Man is really all about. In my heart of hearts, and I don't want to get emotional. I'm going to go quickly. In my heart of hearts, you do not need to listen to that noise.
Yeah.
You do not need to allow folks to try to set you up for failure, because the last thing God has done is put you and your wife together to fail.
Amen.
Now, does that mean that you don't have hard moments and you don't have shortcomings? And I'm going to say it, you don't even have failures. Sometimes you do as human beings, but that does not have to be the norm.
Yeah.
That needs to be the exception. And to me, I believe that's the Lord's plan. And when we begin to do what we're called to do as men, love our wives as Christ loved the church. I'm telling you, Eli and I are trying to be on the other side of this. I would have loved to have been there that day. And wouldn't you like to have been the one guy that was saying, go get him? Hey, Dave, I'm with you, brother. Go get him. Yeah. I'm behind you 1,000%, man. I believe you can do it, and I believe God's in it. So I want to be that kind of person. I want that language to come out of my life. I want that language to fall on my spouse's ears. I want that language to fall on my kids' ears. I want that language to fall on Eli and Adam and Johnny and Michelle, everyone that I minister with. I want them to hear me saying, Amen. Go get it. If God's led you that way, man, that seems huge. It does. But I'm telling you, if the Lord's in it, I'm with you. And let's go get it. How can I help you make this happen? So don't listen. Oh, that was almost my preacher voice. Don't listen to the negative language. And Eli, social media can be a scapegoat for us if we're not careful. But let's not just try to call it social media. Let's just call it the voice of the world today. It's the same as it always has been. The delivery mechanism is the same. It's different. Yeah. But, the message of the world to men and women of God are the same as it always is. You're crazy. That's never going to work. They've been trying that for years. What do you mean Jesus is coming again? I had somebody tell me that one time, that I worked with. He knew who I was and knew my faith. I was young. I was a really young man. I was about Eli's age. And I remember he called me on the car back. Yeah, you ain't been here in a long time. I think you pipe dreaming to say that he coming back, and that's the language of the world around you. And can you speak to that, Eli, in a way that I can't in your generation? That, it's easy for people with white hair, guys, to tell you, oh, don't, and here we are. We're using the media of the day. We're leveraging it because there's good in it. If you use it correctly. So it really doesn't have to do with the media as much as the message that we see on it. So can you speak into young people's lives in a way that I can't about the nature of the message of the world into their lives today?
Yeah, I sat on an ordination council, I think it was about a week or two ago at this point, and there was a wide array of men in that room who had hundreds of years of experience in that room. and they were telling me about the way that the strategies of the ministry change, but the message does stay the same.
Absolutely.
And one of the things they were talking about is a man in there told me that, media is huge in today's day and age. And he said, instead of looking at it as, oh, that's too far gone, we can't use that, it's over because the enemies won that over. It's like, no, use that and leverage it for the good of the delivery of the gospel. And I think that's really important because I think about, in my life and marriage and going into marriage, a lot of what's on the internet and what's on Instagram and what's on Facebook is, man, you wait till you get to year 5. I mean, wait till you get to year 5 of marriage. It's going to be horrible. And he said, all right, well, okay, after you get to year 7 now, I saw this video. After you get to year 7, it's going to be a little easier. And I'm sitting here thinking,
I can't wait 7 years.
I'm like I'm not even there yet, and I'm like year 5. I gotta wait till year 7.
Long? I can't wait that long.
So the way that the world and the media, especially, I love how you mentioned that because the media, especially, is you can't avoid it. I mean,
you really can't.
It's
out there
everywhere.
Yep, it's out there.
For us as Christians, and especially for me in the position that I'm in, having the opportunity and the calling as a pastor to leverage that media in a way that I can say, all right, I'm not going to let the enemy use this. I'm going to actually pull it back, take it back, and say, I'm going to use this for the promotion of good, which is Jesus Christ. And it's so hard to hear that and to try to frame your mind a little bit and to say, well, man, that's how life's going to be.
So you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? You don't have to do that. And honestly, I think it's grand. Absolutely. If you're a Christian and you're an influencer, man, if you've got 1 million Instagram followers, praise Jesus, man.
Amen.
Use that as leverage and to be able to combat that negative, evil message with a positive, holy message out there, an encouraging message. And, nothing wrong with that.
Honestly, I think that's kind of the vein of what we do here. Is
Absolutely.
That, you don't have to spend very much time on Spotify to see what's out there. And for us to be a small light,
just as man, praise
talking
Jesus,
about the gospel,
praise Jesus,
talking about
man,
the goodness of God in the podcast,
and a life lived after Him is good.
Yes.
I'm just telling you, it's not easy, but it's good. No life is easy. It doesn't matter where you are. I mentioned it in the pulpit Sunday that this little golfer, that took his own life this past weekend has troubled me. 30 years old, got the world by the tail. About to play in the U.S. Open, just played in the Masters, PGA Championship, all this stuff, it has arrived at 30 by the world standards, has everything that you could possibly think an individual could want. Yeah. And yet, even though he was a Christian, I believe that with all my heart from what I've read, he just struggled. He had some struggles, man, that sometimes overcome us. The message of the world into us today can rob you as you walk with the Lord of your positivity, of your joy, and of your strength. And dude, I pray for his family, and I even pray that out of this horrific, we just talked about David, out of this horrific occurrence in the lives of one of the Lord's children, that something so positive and something so powerful. His dad said he was good to people, he loved people, and my challenge to you, if you loved him at all, is be nice to people. Now, wouldn't that be cool if the legacy of his life began to change this negative message into something positive out there, that the Lord took what the enemy meant for evil and worked it for good? And I know that's that family's prayer, his prayer, is that something good comes out of this. So, guys, don't be driven away and deterred by the message, if you will, of your peers, of the world around you. So that doesn't bother a giant killer. You might think about it, but it's not going to deter you, okay? So don't let that happen. So we talk about the magnitude, all right, of the enemy. Even if it's a giant thing you got to accomplish, don't let that stop you if the Lord's called you to it. The message of your peers. Thirdly, I thought we've talked about this a little, but I think it bears that we highlight it right here. Don't let the method of your living deter you. Giant killers don't let the method of their living deter them. We touched on this. He's a sheep herder, man. That's what he does. That's his area of expertise. When you look at David's resume, what qualifies you here, to do this?
Love that.
Oh, I'm a sheep herder, man. Yeah. Yeah. You ever been in a battle? No, not really. I mean, not with another human being. Yeah. Yeah. You ever put on an armor? No, I don't. Do you have any armor? No, I don't really have any of that, man. What do you have? Well, I got a slingshot that I carry with me, and I got a staff. I got a shepherd's staff, and I got a bunch of sheep. I'm good at driving them around, and they love me. They follow after me, and I take care of. That's not a giant resume. That's not a giant killing resume right there. No. So I would say this: don't let the method, of your living, where you are, what corner of the world you're in, don't let the method of your living. I don't know where you're picking this up today, but don't let the method of your living deter you from being a giant killer in your life, for your family, and for your peers around you. Look at David. I think this is super. He was a giant killer for his brothers, for his dad, his family, his mom, the nation of Israel.
Yeah.
He was a giant killer for an entire nation.
It's true.
Here, this little shepherd, was a giant killer for all those people. And it doesn't matter where you are or what the method of your living is. It doesn't matter what you do for a living, Doesn't matter how much money you make. Doesn't matter how flashy your resume is. You can be a giant killer, and you should be, under the leadership of the Holy Spirit, because you have a family, you have a nation that you haven't seen. If the Lord tarries, I hope to have a downline that I haven't seen, that I won't see till I get to glory if he tarries somewhere that's done something. And you say, well, I'm not ever going to have kids. You know what? You're sowing into the, how many, I don't know that I'm of the lineage of David, but certainly he was a giant killer for me and for you. And we're here today being impacted by his life. And didn't matter what the method of his living was. I used to sing a song years ago at camp for kids. I don't know why this came back to my mind when I was leading worship at camp. I would give this message to kids that God has a plan for you. And Eli, that's your message, is it not, to students?
True, all the time.
I think that is the core of our message to children and students as they're growing. God has a plan for you. And no matter what others see in you, or no matter where you are or what you're doing, that does not limit the impact of that plan. And the name of it was Shepherd Boy. When others see a shepherd boy, God, he might see a king. Your life might be filled with ordinary things, but here's God using those ordinary things to set you up to be a giant killer. So how does that strike you, Eli? Does not matter. The method of your living doesn't matter. In the realm of you being a giant killer for your family, for your workmates, for your friends, for people around you, for people who might not even know you in the days ahead. It just shouldn't hinder you. How does that land with you, Eli?
Well, I remember distinctly, a few years back in October of 2021, when the Lord very clearly called me into the ministry. And I was so curious as to what that looked like, because I was a car mechanic. And I was sitting there thinking, I remember distinctly working on.
You're really going a long way. That's what the enemy's telling you. You're going a long way.
I thought to myself, I'm like, well, Lord, you want me to be in the ministry, you want me to go and do things for the kingdom, but I'm underneath a car right now.
What's up?
And as I started to see the people around me that I worked for, the customers that we had, and how I could influence their life just by the impact that I had and by the person that I was, just as a mechanic, I thought, well, my job is insignificant as in the realm of the kingdom work, and it's really not.
No,
I mean the impact that I was able to make just as a mechanic underneath the car was huge for the kingdom. So don't let the enemy, and don't let the method of your living, just as you're saying, I'm just doctor.
This.
I'm just this.
This.
I'm not a pastor. Mm-hmm. Well, you don't have to be a pastor to spread the love of Jesus Christ and to love other people, and to show them what the Lord's really, what the ministry of the Lord's about. You don't have to be in our boat to be doing ministry. Everybody's called into the ministry in some way or the other. And that's exactly the message that I was receiving when I was doing that. And I tell students that now is, they're going into, going in off to college across the country. And it's like, well, I'm going into exercise
You're not going to make a
science.
dime for another 5 or 6 years, man.
Like you have the opportunity to minister to more people than I ever will in that realm.
I think it's awesome.
Take advantage of that.
It's a great word, man. And I remember there was some ministry I was able to do before I was in the vocational ministry that I can't do now.
Yeah,
absolutely. There was an impact that I had in those days that I really can't have now. It's just not, people look at it different. So
Yeah.
there was a way I could speak into people's lives and impact people's lives then
Yeah.
that I really don't have available to me now. So you're right, Eli. It doesn't matter what you do.
And I even think about now too, of all the jobs that I had worked, and my talk about a resume. I did a bunch of different jobs. I worked at a gas station. I worked at FedEx. I worked at a mechanic shop. Did a lot of odds and ends.
You
jobs.
worked though, brother.
Did a lot
you
of
were
work.
working, man.
But I think about all the culmination of those things, and even in moments where somebody asks, well, Pastor Eli, I need to get my car fixed. Can you help me change my tire? Can you help me fix my
You're
tire
ready,
rod?
aren't you?
And
You're
that
ready to
even when
minister,
I'm sitting
man.
there thinking that's not ministry. It absolutely is.
Sure is,
and that's
brother.
that's
Yeah,
part
and
of what it's
I have
about.
a little vision. I know the head of our men's ministry, and I've talked about this a bit. Wouldn't it be a cool thing if we just had a Saturday oil change day
Oh, man.
for widows? And I'd come do that, man.
It's so
I'd
cool.
love that. I don't know if I could roll under the car. I could pour the oil.
Yeah.
I could change
We
the
have a
filter if
team.
I could reach it.
I'll be up under
I
there
can do
cracking the
that,
bolts,
but if I'm
you-
under, I'm in trouble, brother. You get me a creeper, maybe. Just lay me down there and let me roll out of the way, and another car come in, I'll roll under it. Maybe I could do that. But that'd
love
be
it.
it, wouldn't it? That's a ministry,
Yes,
man.
absolutely.
It's an absolute
absolutely.
ministry that makes an impact in people's lives. So I'm looking for opportunity, and that's what you should do. Here at Trinity, we're trying to give lay people opportunity to
Yeah.
use their gifts and talents for the kingdom's glory. And that's a good word for us today. Giant killers do not let the method of their living deter them
Amen.
from engaging in the battle. And I'm going to go on the other side. This thought crossed my mind while we were sitting here. We've talked about David being so lowly, and on the backside, I don't know that he could have gotten any more low than a kid shepherd. I don't know that he could have gotten any more low.
It's true.
But what about on the other end? What about you guys that the Lord has elevated and given you grand positions of great responsibility and influence and even affluence? We could say that, even He's put some wealth in your portfolio, in your pocket. You're never too big either, that the Lord won't use you mightily in humble and powerful ways to overcome giants. So don't think you've outgrown it, all right? Don't think, okay, I've made it. I'm at ease now. I guarantee you that married couple that made it to 7 years and said, now it's easy. Oh, man, am I praying for you, because you got to be as diligent, to keep us that fresh day in and day out. I'll tell you, Tammy and I went to Cracker Barrel last night. It just blessed my spirit. You know that I call her my bride. If you've listened to this at all, you know that about us. So the lady at the desk said, just you two? I said, yeah, just me and my bride. And there was this lady waiting to pay that was behind us as we were waiting at the desk to go sit down. And she walked about 20 feet to catch us before we left. And she said, I want to tell y'all congratulations. I think that's just the greatest thing that ever happened. And I said, I appreciate that. And it is. I said, but we're talking about 35 years ago. We just celebrated our 35th anniversary. And she said, that's even better. She said,
awesome.
I wish. She said, we just celebrated our 63rd anniversary.
Ooh,
And we
wow.
feel that way about each other, that it
is
just
awesome.
started. So, hey, you don't ever outgrow these principles. So I don't care where you are. Maybe you're influential. Maybe you got affluence. You've not outgrown being a giant killer. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The mode, the method of your living doesn't matter to a giant killer. Now then, Eli, I know we've been at this a bit. I'm going to try to transition us here to some things that I think are intrinsic in this story that'll help us, okay? Help our faith. Here's what does matter. I talked about what doesn't matter. I gave you 3 things that don't matter to a giant killer. Here's the one thing that does matter, okay? So I set this up. I've said it twice. I hope if you're note takers, you're ready to write, because that's one of my techniques. I'll tell you a couple times that this is really important before I throw it out there. What really does matter to a giant killer is this, the measure of your faith. That's what matters.
Yep.
And that's the only thing that matters to a giant killer. That's at the rock bottom of this, is the measure of your faith. And you say, where do you see that? I want you to see that David was exemplifying a giant-killing kind of faith. We talked about this with Noah. It's a belief that births an obedience. That's faith. Same, faith doesn't change. Same in David's life. It's a belief in God that bursts an audacious, here we go, a big-time, bold boat builder. Here we have a giant killer, Here we have an audacious guy that's going against something so huge, and he's just a kid. But his faith was bigger than anything that was around him in the Lord. So it's the measure of your faith. That's all that matters, is do you trust God?
Yeah.
And do you trust Him completely? I don't believe at all that David was acting here in a haughty manner. I believe that God had told him. I believe when that giant's words fell on his ears, the Lord stood up and said,
Yep.
I don't want you to stand for that. I don't want you to let that go. I want you to say something. I want you to move, and I want you to act. You're my servant. Yep. Go do something about this. And I believe under the Lord's direction, that's not there, but I believe it's there. Under the Holy Spirit's direction, David said, I hear you, Lord, and I trust you. Because in his flesh, I got to just be honest with you. There's no way in his flesh he didn't look out there and hear what that guy said and think, holy smoke. You know, I mean, really, this is a big dude right here. And obviously, this was not an inexperienced soldier. No. This was a guy probably had done in some people in his lifetime. Very powerful man. He had been there before, but yet here's the Holy Spirit speaking into David's heart, and the measure of his faith was grander, okay, than any obstacle, than any message, than even his place in life. And these three that we mentioned didn't matter to him. Why they didn't matter was because the measure of his faith was just much bigger than those things. So what matters to a giant killer, guys, is the measure of your faith. So I'm looking for the Lord to increase my faith, Eli. I want the measure of my faith to exceed the place that it's in. I want day in and day out my faith to grow in the Lord. And I would pray. I'm not certain. You know, I don't know if David was certain until that moment that the measure of his faith was as big. I hope that if I were in a moment like that and the Lord spoke to me clearly, that I'd respond in this way. How do you feel about this idea? What does that make you feel like, Eli? Sometimes I think, Lord, I wish I had more faith. And sometimes I think, gosh, I don't have any faith. And sometimes I think, well, you know, I'm doing it. So how does that set with you in this ever-changing perception in men's hearts and minds of where our measure of faith really is?
You know, and I said this about Noah, and I'll say it about David too. The only thing I can relate to David with here in this situation is that we're both human beings.
Yeah.
And if I think about David's situation here and looking out and to see what he's having to face, I can't help but think that, I mean, as a man, as an individual, as a human being in this world, in this flesh, I'd have been shaken, dude. I mean, I'm nervous. Like, you really want me to go out here and do this? And then I found that I was skimming through. I found this verse. Verse 46 talks about this bodacious boldness that David had. He said, this day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. Yeah. And I will give the dead bodies of the host of the Philistines this day to the birds of the air and the wild beasts. And he goes on. He's like,
cat. I guarantee you.
Don't worry about me. I got you covered.
I got you.
And the Lord's going to make me and help me do it. And I love that.
Amen, brother. The measure of his faith, incredible.
Huge.
Just had complete and utter trust in the Lord to walk out there in the face of such an enemy, in the face of such a message from his peers, and certainly understanding that he wasn't a soldier. He understood that. By no means at all was he a soldier. Think about him trying to put the king's armor on. You know, the king thought, gosh, if you're going to go, son, let me at least try to help you a little bit. Maybe we'll make the battle last about 15 seconds if I put some armor on you.
You want some armor?
Yeah,
some
maybe.
Armor.
And what did he say? Look, this isn't me, you know. I'm not trusting in any armor. I'm trusting in the Lord. So the measure of his faith was just huge. Incredible. Dude, I think about this. I would have given them their food, ran back home as fast as I could, and I would have said, Dad, you're taking the next load. Dude, I'm not taking any more food out there. I'm not going back out there. I'm just not at all. But here's David, you know, the measure of his faith, just incredible and inspirational, and it's integral to being a giant killer, to understand that the measure of your faith makes all the difference. So I know what you're thinking. I believe. And I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking, and we're going to talk about this a little bit. So how do we increase our faith? How do we increase this measure of faith? Just going to pull a few things, and we're going to talk about them quickly, because I'm trying to watch the clock, Eli. This is probably going to be 2 episodes, but we'll figure it out when we get there. Eli's the guy with that. So listen to these thoughts that I have right here to how to increase the measure of your faith, or what increase, maybe more particularly. Why was David able to do this? Why was the measure of his faith such that he was able to do this? The first thing I think that we got to run to is David's past experience with the Lord anchored his faith. We said that Goliath, this wasn't his first battle, and this was certainly probably David's first military battle, but this was not his first experience with the Lord at all. in battle. If you look in the scripture, Eli, did you pull anything out as you were breezing through there about maybe some things that David alluded to that anchored his faith? He said, hey, one time I was out in the field and my sheep were in trouble.
Yep.
What did he say? Hey, this bear, right?
Yep, you had a
jumped
bear,
out of the
a bear and a
woods.
lion. They
The
took
lion
took
jumped
a lamb
out of
from him.
So what did he say? I just love that language that's there. I think it's around verse 33 that he begins to talk about his past experience with the Lord that anchored the measure of faith that he had was anchored in his past experiences. So what do you read there, Eli?
Well, he goes on to say there in verse 37, he talks about how this bear and this lion took a sheep or a lamb from his flock.
Little sheep.
A little sheep, and took a lamb from his flock. And they were asking, like, well, what'd you do in that situation? David said, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine.
Amen.
And then Saul, I love what he said to David there. He said, go and the Lord will be with you.
And God be with you, baby.
Said,
absolutely.
happen,
you got it. You trust him. I see why you do.
And
And
I love
don't
that.
you think the king's eyes had to be open a little bit at that moment to say, the Lord sent this kid right here. I believe the Lord's in this, and what a thought. There was one passage in there. There's one place in that I love the figurative language. He said, the Lord delivered that bear to me, and he said, I took that lamb out of its mouth.
Oh, yeah.
It was unharmed. The Lord was so gracious in that he delivered me from the bear, but I was able to walk down there and take that little lamb out of the bear's mouth and it have a scratch on it.
Yeah.
That's the experience that David had with the Lord. He was like, if the Lord can do that, if the Lord can deliver the lion into my hand and that bear in such a manner as that, I don't think he's going to have any problem right here in this day with this old Philistine, this uncircumcised Philistine out there in the field. And what did he say to the Philistine? Dude, you don't understand this, but I'm not out here by myself, all right? My past experience tells me that the God that delivered me in those moments is going to take care of me in these moments. And in the way that bear was dead and the way that lion was dead, you're going to be dead in just a few minutes, and I'm going to cut your head off. Interesting, and we'll get to that in a minute, but interesting that he had no sword.
No.
But he said,
I'm going
to cut your head off in just a minute. What did he think? I'm going to use your sword to cut your head off. Now, that's pretty big.
Dude,
that's a big deal. In just a few minutes, this is going to happen. So his past experience with the Lord anchored the measure of his faith. That's a reason he was able to trust the Lord so much in this moment. And I think there's some comfort for me in this, because the Lord's not going to draw you into a battle that big unless he's been with you in some battles before. Isn't that powerful?
Good.
He's not going to draw you. He's not going to just throw you off the high dive into deep into the pool and say, good luck to trust in me. No, he's going to walk you into that place. And when you get to that place where you need a measure of faith of this magnitude, you're going to already have been some places with him that he has proven to you that he is there and that he's going to take care of you and that he is able to meet the moment in your life. How does that encourage you, Eli? That, hey, the measure of your faith is only going to be anchored. The measure of faith you need is going to be there because of your past experiences with the Lord.
I think about, I mentioned this in the last time I preached, last Sunday, or 2 Sundays ago.
You did a good job, Eli.
I talked about Mamaw Gale, and I know she's listening. I love you, Mamaw. I was talking to her about, I'm like, Mamaw, you got some experience in life, and I was just wondering, how do you stay encouraged in the midst of the evil day? Because that's what I was preaching about, is how the world inherently, because of its sinful nature, is evil. And she said, well, I usually stay encouraged by reflecting on all the times God's brought me through again.
Amen.
And again.
Yes,
and
you're
again.
right on, brother.
And I'm like, wow, that's encouraging, because she said, in the midst of the world's chaos, in the midst of the things that try to knock me down, I can recount time after time that the Lord's brought me out of that and made it way better than I could have ever even imagined it. And
Amen.
he's delivered me every
and there's
time.
Gail preaching right to us
Come on.
Be the Man. I love it.
She's
and
delivering
through
from
Eli
home.
on Sunday morning. And that's exactly what we're saying here. And how comforting that the Lord is going to prepare you for the moment with the measure of faith you need to meet it. I'm going to say that again. How comforting it is that the Lord is going to prepare you for that moment with the measure of faith that you need to meet it. How about that? Doesn't matter where you find yourself in life, the measure of faith you need is going to be there because the Lord has already been there in your life, preparing you for that moment and enabling you to meet that need. hey, this week, just this morning, sent out a little prayer to a family. One of their sons, young son, this is the second week in a row that he's had to fly somewhere to have some surgery. Their faith, Eli, I marvel at the faith of this mom and dad and the faith of that young man and how it is there for the moment. I got to tell you, I don't know how they're doing it, but the Lord has been there time and time and time again. That is their testimony. Yeah. Well, my gosh, he's delivered us in this. He's delivered us in that. He's took care of him in this. He's been there in his life in that moment. Why would he not be there in his life in this moment? And that's a perfect illustration of what Gail's saying, that, hey, even in a micro, in a quick surpassing, you can see the Lord in the macro of your life. In every circumstance, you see that he has prepared you for that moment. So, hey, David, man, his past anchored his faith in that moment.
And you look at, going down a few verses there, David responds by, Saul's trying to give him armor. And, David's confidence in the Lord was so strong that he said, I haven't tested this armor.
I don't know if it'll work.
It's not going to work. My trust is not in that armor.
I don't know anything about
My trust is knowing that God's going to bring me through to it.
Amen.
He was preaching what Paul was preaching in Ephesians 6 before even Paul was born.
Put it on. Put on the armor of God, man. I don't need all that. I got the Lord.
Yep.
I love the way, and we're going to transition to this next one. Hey, his past anchored. His past experiences with the Lord, man, they anchored his faith in that moment for sure. But I love this. David's speech to his brothers and a mocking giant declared his faith. So there's a moment, okay, where your past, you say, yeah, I remember that.
Right.
I remember that. I do. Lord, you've been with me, and I know you're going to be with me now.
Right.
And then there's a moment, that needs to come out of your mouth.
That's right.
And you're going to say, Lord, you're going to do this. And when negative voices come to you, say, hey, that may be your experience, but it's not going to be mine. The Lord's going to take care of me in this. He's got this. So we see that David's speech, man, somehow that added to the measure of his faith, that declaration. I think if David had just had those conversations with himself in his mind, what if he hadn't have said out loud to the king, hey, let me just tell you something. The bear, done. The lion, done. And the same living God that delivered them, this Philistine is going to be taken care of. It was the nature of that declaration that measured, that produced the measure of his faith, and it impacted those around him. So, guys, at some point, you got to trust it so much that you're willing to say, hey, it doesn't matter what it looks like. That seems insurmountable, but God's got this. I promise you that he does. I can tell you, Eli, and if you're involved with the church, you kind of know these. If you're listening from somewhere else, you don't. We've had a stormwater drain project. I'm just going to take that. That's been holding us up I say holding us up. The Lord's timing is now. But it's been in process for about a year and a half now, it seems.
Yeah.
It seems like we had trouble on every hand's turn, trying to get the permits, trying to get the plans, trying to get what we need, trying to get released to do it. And then when we get released to do it, in the back of my mind, I know it's going to cost us a boatload of money to get this done. To get a drain project, something that's in the ground, essentially. But we have to have it. It's foundational for us to move ahead. I know that it's going to cost a fair bit of money. And the Lord told me year and a half ago, when I knew that we were going to have it, and they were throwing around some costs, I said, Lord, we can't pay for that. I don't know how in the world we're going to pay for that. And the Lord did with me what he's done with David right here. He said, Stace, you're sitting in a sanctuary that no one believed that I could pay for, that's paid for. You've got a student ministry center that you built that's now the students have grown that student ministry center. I had to move back to the worship center, and our 5th and 6th grade, just 2 grades, are down there in that ministry center. When you built it was a giant cost to that. It's paid for. So he ushered me right through those things, and I began to say unto myself out loud, and you know what he said to me? When the time comes to do this, it's going to be paid for. Yeah. And the other Wednesday night, when the church voted to do it, I didn't let this out, but I had known this a little bit before already. When the church voted to do it, what a privilege it was to say to them, guess what? We got the money. We got $205,000 that the Lord has given us. Yeah. Before they've ever broken ground on that project down there,
Lord knew.
Is paid for. Now, see, at some point, you got to speak that out and say to folks, and all the while, we've been saying to each other's leadership, we don't have a choice. We got to do this. The Lord's shown up in the past. He's taken care of us all the way, and he's going to pay for this. I promise you that he is. That's been the declaration of our church leadership, and here's the Lord, all right, saying, I told you, you're right. what I told you was right. It's paid for. So that's just there. Again, one micro situation that we're throwing in the macro experience of what the Lord's doing all around us and in our lives every day. So at some moment, your speech to those negative people around you, and even to that mountain or that giant that's in your way, it has something to do with the measure of your faith, okay? It declares your faith and brings it out in the open and breathes life into it in a real way. How's that strike you, Eli?
Well, I think about in mental health counseling and mental health coaching and in the realm of wellness, in the well-being of your life as an individual, the affirmations, positive affirmations of your own self, those kind of things like, I can do this, you can do this, I've got it. Those things are important. And I think in the same vein of our faith, of if the Lord's providing for you and the Lord told you he's going to provide for you, instead of keeping that inside, instead of saying, well, yeah, I know that, encouraging other people around you, saying, look at what the Lord did for me, and he can do that for you too.
I agree.
And to reinforce those kind of declarations that you're saying of the Lord's timing and his provision is on time, it's perfect, and it's abundant.
I mean, love that, brother.
He keeps going and proclaim that, and that's huge.
I think it's key, too. You have to realize that David just wasn't bragging, and he wasn't speaking on his own. I think sometimes this word of faith movement, and I'm not being critical, you have to be really careful with this idea that just because I speak it out, all of a sudden now it's mine.
Right.
No. There first has to be this leadership of the Lord, all right, in your life, this voice of the Holy Spirit saying, I'm about to do this in your life, son. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to tell people what's coming right here. And don't be afraid to declare your trust in me with this moment. Don't be afraid to do that because I've told you I'm in it and I'm going to take care of it. That's when that boldness to me comes, to be able to speak out. Now, can we always, there's some things, guys, and I'm going to go to the other side of this now. Just be careful that you're not speaking out of your own abundance, okay? All right?
Yeah.
Speak out of the Lord's abundance. But there's some things that the Lord has promised. He's promised he's going to meet our need.
Yep.
He's promised he's going to use us. He's promised he's going to bless us when we follow after him. It might not look like it in the moment, but he's promised that everything in our life is going to work for the good. He's promised that he's going to be with us. He's promised that he's going to protect us. So it's never bad to say, I'm trusting the Lord with my every breath in life, and declare that to other people. It encourages them when they see the Lord show up. So we see his speech to his brothers. And Eli, why this is hitting my mind, I'm just going to say it. The scriptural precedent is out of the abundance of the heart, mouth speaketh, all right? So some way let your speech betray the abundance of what the Lord's doing in your heart and in your life, okay? Third thing, and we're going to land this plane after this, that I see that helped the measure of David's faith be there to meet the moment in his life. This is the one thing that does matter. We got to go back to there. Three things that don't matter. The one thing that does matter is the measure. All right, the measure of your faith in the Lord in that given moment. The third thing I want to talk about with these folks, Eli, is David's preparation. It exemplified his faith in the Lord, all right? His preparation was unique, and it exemplified his faith in the Lord. So he didn't need the king's armor, but he took what he was used to, didn't he? All right, the preparation in his life, the weapon that he did have was what? It was just a little sling. And he went down to the creek, and I believe he was praying.
Smooth stone.
I believe with all my heart. He was down at the creek going,
Lord, I need a stone.
Hey, it's time. Hey, here we are. I'm about to walk out here. All right, tell me which.
Stone.
I believe he was looking down going, I've done this before, Lord. This is the weapon that you've given me. This is the area of my giftedness. This is the area of my expertise. This is what you've utilized in my life. This is how I do it. Yep. So his preparation exemplified his faith in the Lord. And I believe he bent down and said, show me which one of these to get. Show me which of these stones. I want the ones I get to be the ones I need so they'll fly right. I believe he was that deeply committed to his preparation. So his preparation exemplified his faith in the Lord. Look, this is what you've given me. This is what I know. This is my area of giftedness. This is what you've shown me that you've used to deliver me in the past. And this is what you're going to use today. And I'm going to go down and just get before you with the tools you've given me. And I'm going to trust you to use them in my life this day to show yourself mighty and deliver this giant into my hand. How do you set with that idea, Eli? He took what the Lord had provided for him and gifted him to utilize. 5 smooth stones. How do you feel about that?
I think about a message Adam preached one time about, using what you've got with the time that you got, with all the resources that you've been given. Sometimes in the moment you're going to feel like you're unequipped. You're going to feel like you don't know how to execute a situation, or how you're going to talk to somebody in the midst of a tough situation, or any realm of your life as things come up. And
Amen.
To trust in the Lord's leadership, and to know that even though it might not seem like you got the equipment at the moment, or you might not have the resources you need, Lord's going to come through, and He's going to provide
giving you what
for
you need.
every
Absolutely.
single time.
He's giving you what you need. You might not think it's enough. You might not even think it's the right thing.
Right.
But He's giving you what you need. That's a good word, Eli.
And then, to look at David, at the end, spoiler alert, the Philistine, the Goliath died.
Probably, I'm guessing most of you know the end of this, man. I guarantee you.
But I think, and I don't know this for sure, but I mean, the Lord gave him 5 smooth stones, but I think he got it on the first try.
Oh, I think so too.
I mean, he pulled out one stone. He's dead.
Oh, Eli, that's so good. That's so rich. I heard a preacher one time say, I think the only reason he had 5 was because Goliath had 4 brothers, and he wanted to be ready. If they jumped out the crowd, he wanted to be ready. Hey, I'm prepared for you boys. All right, come on. I got one for you.
Yep.
If you want some of what the Lord's got,
yep.
I got one for you. I got to believe that nobody was coming out. I think the tables turned completely when they saw this little kid cut that giant's head off.
Yeah.
The story goes, what did the Philistines do? Man, when they saw what happened, it took 1 stone, right?
Yeah.
Bang, in the forehead, down he went. David did exactly what he said he was going to do. Took the giant's heavy sword, cut his head off, and said, here you go. Yeah. And what did the armies of the Philistines do? They did what I would have done. They turned tail and ran. And the scripture said that the Israelite armies, emboldened by this grand display of the Lord, what did they do? They took out after those boys. They said, all right, we got you. We got you on the run.
Pursued them.
So we see here this 4th thought, okay? His preparation, it showed his faith in the preparation of the Lord. His preparation exemplified, okay, his faith in the Lord. I don't need your armor king. I don't need your battle strategy. I'm sure there were a lot of those guys that were telling them, look, I've been in one-on-ones like this before. Here's what you better do. Watch for the left. Watch for this. You better do that. And David didn't need any strategy. He didn't need the king's armor. He used what the Lord gave him. Good. And his preparation exemplified the fact that, Lord, I'm going to trust what you gave me. Lastly, and we talked about it quickly, David's actions confirmed his faith and displayed the power and faithfulness of the Lord in his life. So the rubber going to meet the road. Eli's right. You cannot miss that God delivered.
Yeah.
All right? The measure of his faith, God delivered. His action on that faith, what he did, walked out there, what he did. And I love the fact that his language to the Philistine that Eli read right there, the Philistine laughed. What in the world, guys? I bet he said, is this the best you got?
Yeah.
You're going to send a kid. Isn't that what are you going to send a kid out here? That's I don't even understand what you guys are thinking. And David said, don't get too haughty, because I'm going to tell you, you're just about done. Your days are over, and let me tell you, I'm going to be feeding your flesh to the birds here in just a few minutes, buddy. And that's what happened. Yeah. The Lord showed up mighty. In one of those moments, you think about all these movies that guys get stoked up about, what's the Mel Gibson movie that everybody watches? Oh, why is that title? Why is that fading from me that he was the Scottish guy, and let him into. Oh, I can't believe it. I can't think of it either. I can't believe it. But guys get stoked up over those movies where this champion goes down and he's victorious, and they go from they thought they were dead to oh my gosh, we have just won the victory. Let's go get it. And they were just jazzed up, about their prospects and the fact that David got Braveheart. Yeah. You got it. Woo, that's it. Man, Eli. Why did I not think of that? But at any rate, that's one of the, the testosterone most testosterone injected movies of all time, And here we go. We watch it just to get ourselves charged up, I used to be a Jean-Claude Van Damme guy back in the day. Those movies, Bloodsport, where he's fighting this big giant karate guy that nobody can beat, and all of a sudden, he's blind and can't see, but he still finds a way.
Yeah.
And every kick he lands, every blow he lands, when it looks like he's done, and I'm in the living room going, who can I fight?
Yeah.
Let's go out and fight somebody. So, here's David's action displayed God's power in a mighty way. And it confirmed the measure of his faith. And man, oh man, did it inspire people around him and set the stage, guys. I think this is the story of David and Goliath. It set the stage for every mighty act that the Lord was going to perpetrate in David's life through him for the nation of Israel. It set the stage. This moment set the stage for so many mighty things that God was going to do in his life. It set the stage for those songs. Saul's killed his thousands, but David, he's killed his 10,000s, and it ushered him into the place that the Lord had set for him. That man after God's own heart, that king, maybe likely Israel's greatest and most influential king, even the Savior of the world coming from his lineage, all in this moment. Set the stage, okay? So, hey, don't be afraid, guys, to act when the Lord's telling you, and watch him show up, because it'll set the stage in your life for even mightier things that he's going to do, and it's going to inspire those around you to even mightier things in the service of the Lord.
And look at how, I think about how when this giant was in the way, and think about David's actions of him slinging, that stone right at his forehead. And I resonate with him as a man in the flesh, just thinking about, like, sometimes whenever there's a giant in the way and I cast the stone to let's see if the Lord's going to strike it down, the Lord guided that stone right to his forehead, and I sit back and look and think, I don't know how that happened, but the Lord guided that stone.
He did it.
I can think about David thinking, well, I knew how I was confident in the Lord, but I'm so glad.
I'm amazed.
that
I believe he was equally
forehead.
Inspired, and he's
and
like,
I am so happy.
All right,
so, Pastor, how many times in your life has the Lord guided the stone for you and knocked down the giant?
Countless, and I think that's why I love these old stories. I can remember the first time I preached these, I think one of my first messages ever had to do with Daniel, and we'll talk about him as well and his impact in our lives as men. And, I was thinking then, Lord, I hope you do some stuff like that in my life. I really do, in my ministry through me. And, very young man when I first started, I was not ordained, I was just teaching, and people saw a little gift in me and gave me some chances. And I can remember thinking, Lord, I look for the day. I would hear preachers tell stories, I would hear laymen that I respected tell stories of how the Lord showed up and guided that stone and defeated that enemy and moved that mountain.
Yep.
And I would think, God, I just don't have that. How am I ever going to be an effective preacher? And David, maybe in that field one day, was thinking, Lord, I'm just a kid out here. I hear my brothers telling about army and war and victories that you've won.
Yeah.
I don't have that, and here comes a bear. All of a sudden the Lord said, well, let's start. Here comes a bear. That was great, Lord. That was really cool. I don't think anything like that will ever happen again. Well, here comes the lion, David. And there was probably countless other stories that David could have told. And in my life, I can go back to when I was very young, and I took ownership of my faith in my early 20s. It was, I was saved before that, but I really took ownership of my faith then. And I can go to story after story where, the Lord in my own personal life, Tammy and I can go to story after story in our marriage and in our lives where, Lord, I don't know how you're going to do this. I could even tell you a story this past week that she and I have been praying over a thing for a long, long time. And we got a letter in the mail this past week that I don't think the two of us have even been able to talk about it, that the Lord has taken something that was monumental in our lives. We had a plan. We were going to work through it, and, we were going to get through this. It was going to be by the skin of our teeth, but we can make it happen. Right. If we budget just right, and if we do this just right and do that just right, I think we can make this happen, honey. I think we can. I think the Lord's in it, and we're just going to trust you in it, Lord. And he showed up in such a way to say, I was in that a whole lot more than you ever dreamed. Amen. I would be. And I don't know why it surprises me. I'm just like you're talking about David. He was likely a little bit surprised when he cut the giant's head off. He was probably like, Lord, I do not believe this.
I can't believe that.
That I'm standing in this valley right here between two armies.
Yeah.
Out here with, I think for me, and maybe this will help us land this plane, I think what God is trying to show to us, I'm a word man, Eli, you know that. I think the word that jumps out to me time after time in this passage is this. I'm out here with the living God.
Amen.
The eternal living God. Never has been a time when he's not been. There will never be a time when he's not there. He's living. He's in the divine now. And that's who I am connected to. And I think that's at the heart of being a giant killer, is that I am connected to the living God.
Yes.
All right? He is the one and only living God. You know, I don't know any other gods that are living. To be honest with you, I really don't. There are no other gods. There's no one like him. Isaiah said that. Nobody like him. I'm the Lord, he said through Isaiah, and there's none else. Yep. He said that of himself. I'm the Lord, and nobody like me, guys. You can look all you want. You're not going to find anybody like me. And I think today I will leave you with that, because as I read through this chapter afresh in preparation for this, that word over and over and over jumped out at me. I believe David said, here I am, out here again with the living God. Yes. You know, why are you mocking the armies of the living God? I serve the living God, you know, and over. So guys, let that increase the measure of your faith today, because that's really all that matters in being a giant killer. Let that living God flow in and through you today and increase your faith.
I think like we were mentioned earlier about how God does have a plan for you. He's going to guide you. He's going to lead you. We know that he told Jeremiah, I knew the plans I had for you even before you were formed in the womb. While you were in the womb, I knew what was going to happen, and I knew that the plans I have for you are to prosper you and to give you life. And that's the message we're giving you today, is the Lord has a plan for you, and don't let the world distract you and deter you from the plan that he's got for you.
Amen.
So we want you guys to be out there, stay encouraged. If you ever have anything, feel free to reach out to us. I've got that link down there. And I know this is probably, I'm thinking it's going to be a series of maybe three episodes.
Pastor got long-winded on this one.
Hey, if you want to go back and reference those, underneath each of these episodes, we've got a little Q&A thing there. Please reach out to me. Please reach out to Pastor. We've got those all in the little archives I've got there. So we love and appreciate you guys.
Yeah,
and
go be giant killers,
Go be giant killers.
Yeah, go do it.
See you guys.